Hey guys, it's Jen. Happy Wednesday. We are back twice this week, so we get to chat again about a totally different subject. And for those who are able to join us, please feel free to add some comments. But I am going to introduce you all to Bryce Palmer from Armed Forces Insurance, and I'll let Bryce come up and introduce himself, and then we'll talk a little bit about our topic for today. So, Bryce, thanks for being here. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me today. Really excited to be doing this.
Absolutely. So when Bryce and I had talked ahead of time about kind of what kind of topics we thought would really interest this group, one of the things we talked about was insurance, which is not exactly an exciting topic, right? But it is one of those necessary things. And I think particularly with PCS season being where we are, and even for people who, we have a lot of folks that are in that kind of pre-transition phase, and maybe they're headed into their first home as they kind of find their forever home. So just wanting to talk about some of the things we really need to remember. So I hope you guys get something out of this. If you have any questions, insurance questions, feel free to pop those in the comments, and we'll include those in the dialogue. But Bryce, why don't you go ahead and just kind of introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what your role is at AFI.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, as you said, my name is Bryce Palmer. I work in the marketing department here at Armed Forces Insurance. I hold many hats here, including working with many spouses out there. I'm actually working on the front lines, helping them with their, during this PCS season, helping them with their insurance as they move from one location to the next. But I also work with our many business partners and many organizations such as this that we go out and do outreach, education, talk to folks about insurance. Again, not exciting stuff, but necessary. Everybody needs it. So, work with different businesses in the military family sector to just make sure we're getting the word out and helping those who need help.
Yeah, AFI seems to be everywhere military spouses are. So we appreciate your continued support of all the things that we're doing. So in terms of topics, what I'd kind of promised this group was that we talk a little bit about a concept that, maybe people know, but when you and I were talking, I, wasn't exactly sure if everyone would be thinking about this, which is the whole process of insurance reevaluation. So understanding when it makes sense to really go back into those policies and look at those dollar amounts, look at, where they should be, where they are. What are some of the, best tips or the best things you can offer folks to really think about when those policies have kind of sat stagnant and maybe we're just changing addresses every time and we're not really kind of doing that deep dive to make sure it represents our current family. So tell us a little bit about what you see on your end.
Absolutely. So what I see a lot on my end is I'll get someone will come and shop insurance with us, and we'll get their current coverages. And I'll notice that they'll have a policy that in a lot of instances was started when they were 22, 23 years old, coming out of school, maybe coming out of OCS, or coming out of the academy, or just, coming out through the enlisted ranks and moving up. And they set that policy, and it's been 5-10 years for auto insurance since it's been looked at. For homes, oftentimes the last time you looked at your home policy was the minute you put it in place to buy the home. That was done. Everything over to the mortgage processor, and you're done. You're insured, and you're not worried about it again. So sometimes they sit stagnant. I've seen them sit for 10, 15 years, 20 years at a time. And so a couple of rules that I look at or want to encourage you all to take a look at your insurance from time to time. I kind of have two different sets of one. One, I'd say every 5 years. Just if it's been 5 years since you've looked at it, doesn't mean you need to go shop it. Doesn't mean you need to go and hit every insurance company up. But what it does do is maybe go back to your company, your agent, just grab your policy and look at it when it comes in the mail to make sure that it makes sense to you with the coverages. The other side of it is during life events, important life events. And what are those? Child turning 16 years of age, life event insurance. These are maybe insurance life
That's events. An expensive event is what that is.
It is an expensive event, yes. Buying a new car, selling a car, just that change in car, you'd be shocked at what that could do just because you changed your car. Maybe it's moving. Anytime you move, always a good idea to take a look at your insurance. So it's those life events that you're like, something changed. I added a shed to my backyard. I put up a fence. Anything like that, remodeling is good to take a look at.
So in terms and like that, it makes sense. Like those, it's a really good way to just remember to do it, right? If you're having some kind of shift, you're PCSing, whatever, you kind of take a minute just to make sure those numbers really reflect your goods, when it's saying how much of your, like for renter's insurance, what that amount is, looking around your house to be sure you haven't added anything that is of significant value that could really raise the need for that particular policy. How do you find that play in too when we look at kind of the increase in the price of goods that's happened?
That's a great question, because this time is the perfect time to bring that up. Whether it's personal properties for like a renter's policy, whether it's homes, more importantly. So you have that. Maybe you're one of those families, and there's several out there. There's a lot of you that do this. You'll buy a home at one location. So you'll buy it in Fort Collins, Colorado, because you're going to move back there when you retire, but you're going to rent it in the time being because you've got to move to New York, or you got to move to Washington State or somewhere. You're going to Germany. So you're renting, all of a sudden you've got 2 or 3 or 4 rental homes, and you haven't looked at them since you put the renter policy on there, or what they call a dwelling fire policy, but the policy on the home. Or you purchased your home because you have your forever home now, you're retired, or you're getting close and you haven't looked at it in a while. So all of a sudden you've got this, and time passes. Now the insurance companies do a good job of putting what they call an inflation guard on there, which kind of creeps that number up of how the home is insured. But sometimes it does it too much, and sometimes it doesn't do it enough. So you could overinflate your value or underinflate. And right now, underinflating is happening. And that's because we're seeing prices on lumber everywhere go up. On average, I'd say 25%. I know we were talking earlier before we started this. There's articles that are saying prices of lumber and building material, are going up by 40 and 50%. So when you buy a home, or you're building a home, let's say in a big subdivision that's being built, those people who are building that home are buying their lumber because they can buy lumber for 20 houses, 40 houses, 100 houses. But if your house burns down or gets damaged in a hurricane, that price of lumber is going to be higher because you're an individual buying it, not a building company. So it's very important to look at that, because especially right now, the price of lumber is going up, and I don't see where that's going to go down. I don't think it's a COVID trend. I think it's a market trend that is just going up because the amount of building that's going on right now.
So do you find in most cases where, where it might feel like it's a temporary problem, right? Like, maybe there's folks who feel like this is just a COVID thing. I would tend to agree with you that maybe we're going to see this for a while. But even if you go ahead and go in and just make sure that talk to your insurance carrier, make sure that they're looking at those same things. Is there a process, and is there language that I would use with, if I was to call AFI and say, hey, I just want to understand this, what is the language that I'm using to help them understand my goal for that reevaluation?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say one, depending on where your insurance is at, some might be a place where you just have that's the only policy that they offer. Others might be in what they call, an agent who shops multiple policies. So you could say, hey, I want to reevaluate my insurance, or more importantly, I'm happy with my insurance, but I want to make sure my rebuild estimate or the cost to rebuild my home is correct.
Okay.
And any of those words will trigger your agent to go, yeah, let's look at that and make sure. We'll put it through our company's cost estimator, and there's only about 3 or 4 out there. Most of us use the same one, but there's 3 or 4. They're pretty close, and they'll run it through, and it's based on zip code. Okay. So it takes into effect where you live. So the cost in California, in Orange County, California, is going to be different than the cost in Biloxi, Mississippi.
Sure.
So it'll take that into account, and to do that. And one thing I'll mention, because it came to my mind, if you're unsure, or you're like, I think I'm insured properly, but what if I have that cost overrun? The price of material goes up unexpectedly. There is an endorsement. I think almost every company, I'll say almost every, because there's always that one out there that never doesn't do it. But almost every company has what's called an extended dwelling endorsement, which means if your home is insured for, let's just say $100,000, and we put that on there, it increases that. Some people have the option for 25%, 50, sometimes you can go 75 or 100, where it will take that. And let's say it's at 50%, your $100,000 home will have a $50,000 buffer now on it for that 50%. Or your $300,000 home will have a $150,000 buffer on there. Or your $1 million home will have a $500,000 buffer. You
Right.
get where I'm saying.
Yeah.
But you could add a extra protection. It doesn't cost hardly anything to do it. And you can up that percentage. I recommend, 25 is standard, but going to 50, 75, 100 doesn't cost that much more.
Okay. Which like in a time like now, where there is this sort of uncertainty around lumber might be a time to consider something like that. So let me ask you this from sort of just at a carrier standpoint, from an insurance company standpoint, are you finding, should we all sort of be expecting that as this reevaluation is happening behind the scenes, that if those buffers aren't enough, that the premiums on policies would also sort of need to rise to support that? Or are you finding that the premiums are staying stable independent of the market? Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. So that's interesting. You bring that up. I don't want to say it gets complicated.
I'm sure it does.
It's got to get a little complicated. So rates are actually based on loss. And they're based on 80 or 90 different factors. But for the most part, what is your house insured for? What is the loss history of the company in that zip code or in that area? And a lot of times it does go down to zip code. And then they base their rates based on that. So if you're locked in at a rate, when I say locked in, you're never really truly locked in because every year it can change. But if you're in at a rate, they're going to adjust based on what the state allows them to adjust on that. And the only way the only way it changes is if you dramatically increase or decrease your coverages. You ask like, hey, I think I'm underinsured by 50,000. Can we look at this? And then if you raise your insurance by 50,000, that price is going to go up accordingly. But with lumber and materials and stuff, they don't look at it in a price. They don't go out and say, oh, we need to raise premiums because the cost of lumber goes up, because your policy is capped at whatever it says on there. So it's up to you. Once you write that policy, some insurance agents will call out and say, hey, we should reevaluate that. But other companies don't. And I'd say it's 80-20. 80% will never call you again if you don't call them. So it's best, you need to be I hate to say it, but you need to be your own best friend. You need to be your advocate. And you just need to reach out and say, hey, it's a good time to take a look at this. So especially if you haven't heard from your agent in a few years, I always say, I hate to say it, it's a product that I sell that I really hope I don't hear from you much, because that means you got a claim.
Right. No, it's true.
You're experiencing a really bad time in your life. And I hate for that to happen to anybody.
No, for sure. So the other thing I wanted to talk about, and I appreciate that because I didn't realize that. So that was not the answer I was expecting. So that's always fun. But it's good to know that in general, we shouldn't really have to, be too worried about sort of our budgets changing unless we actually actively go in and make adjustments. But from the budgetary standpoint, one of the other things I wanted you to highlight for us, because we had talked a little bit offline about it, is I see a lot, I'll see this on Facebook pages all the time, like who's your carrier, who are you shopping for? And, oh, I got this really great deal with this company. And so I just wanted to kind of, for everyone's benefit, just understand, what are the things, if we are shopping, there's nothing wrong with that, right?
No.
If we are going and shopping, what are the things that we really need to be careful of to ensure that we truly are looking at apples to apples and not something that looks similar, but when we go to file claims, we'll find out is actually different?
So it's hard because, well, there's good news and bad news with that. It's hard because it's rare, let's say you go out into the internet, you throw your information out into the ether and all these quotes come back, and a lot of people will look to price. I mean, let's face it, we've spent 20 plus years of advertising telling you to shop and save, to 15 minutes or more will save you 15% or less on your car insurance. I don't even work for that company. I shouldn't have said that, but you get it. It's already ingrained in us. I mean, who says marketing doesn't work? It just worked right there. I just advertised for another company. But the point is that you can get a price, and price shouldn't be everything. You should absolutely look. And if you print out what's called your declarations page or your coverage pages, so if you have online access to your company, you can find it. You get it once a year or once every 6 months when your policy renews. And if not, just call the company and ask for it. They'll email it to you within 30 seconds. It's easy to get. Take that page, and the quote pages that you have on the other end should look very similar. You'll be able to match coverages. Okay. And the key is you want to make sure that the coverages going across are at the same and I would say better. Very rarely do I advocate for lowering coverages unless you're at that age where I'm paring down, I'm moving into assisted living, I don't have stuff anymore, or you know what, hey, we had a 5-bedroom house, we're going to a 2 because all the kids are gone. We got rid of all their stuff. We kicked them out. They're gone. Yeah, now it's a time to reevaluate. Life event, time to reevaluate what you have. But oftentimes, like our liability needs are your deductible needs. You want to make sure you take that into account. One example of that, and I know we talked a little bit about it, we've got a family right now moving from North Carolina to Florida, and they went through the hurricanes that came through the past year or so through there. And so we got into questions on that. And in Florida, we were able to find a policy that offered them what they call a flat or a 1,000 an all perils deductible. Basically, it's if whatever happens, whether it's fire, theft, tornado, hurricane, windstorm damage, it's $1,000 deductible. And anybody who listens to this who lives on the coast, especially the Eastern Seaboard or the Gulf, will go, holy cow, I don't have that. I have a percentage deductible, or doesn't understand what that means. It basically means if your home's valued at $300,000 and you have a 1% hailstorm or wind deductible or hurricane, your deductible is $3,000. Mm-hmm. Well, I was able to lock this company or family in at $1,000 flat, no matter what it was. And it might have cost them $120 more a year than my other one that had the percentage deductible. But that first hurricane, that first storm, it's going to pay for itself. So it's things like that you want to make sure that that you have the options for, or that a company is not putting you into a percentage deductible if they have $1,000 deductible from what you're going to, just to bring the price down. So you got to watch for those little things. So setting your declarations page, I guess, long story short,
mm-hmm.
I get long.
No, you're good.
Setting your declarations page by the quotes you're getting and comparing those out is very important to do. That way you can make sure on your own you can look at it. Or call somebody like me who would actually take the time to go over that with you, and good or bad or the otherwise would tell you what options are the best. I've told many people, hey, you got a good company with what you got. Here's the coverages. It looks great. Not afraid to say that. And someone who's good in the industry, good agent, will tell you, yeah, no, that policy is way better than mine.
Well, and I think, part of what I'm hearing as you're going through all these is that ultimately there's a relationship that there's value in the relationship, right? Like everything else. And so sometimes we get the best information by really engaging with the person who's in charge of that, and is the professional in that industry to really understand all the pieces. And I think that's where we can really advocate for ourselves the most, when we have that relationship and we can have that dialogue about what our goal is, what we're trying to accomplish, and then having someone like you, help us figure out what that looks like.
No, absolutely. And we can't stress that enough. And I mean, shameless plug here. That's what we strive to do here at Armed Forces Insurance is we have an 800 number. You call in and you'll get somebody. But if you like that person, they're yours.
Right.
You can develop that relationship. We're big on that. And other companies, you call in and you may not talk to the same person every time. I mean, I don't talk to the same person who, when I call in on my electric bill, I never talk to the same person every time. Although I don't know if I want to establish a relationship with my electric company. But the point is that we feel it's important. I feel it's important. Relationship is important. And though after that first sale, I may not talk to you again for a couple years, or my agents may not talk to you again for a couple years, I still get emails from people. Like, I've moved out of that sales role and I'm more in this marketing, getting out to people role. But I still get emails like, "Hey, Bryce, it's Sonia. Just wanted to let you know this, and this happened. Can you help me adjust my insurance?" It's been 2-3 years since I talked to them, but we'll get back on the phone and talk like, "Oh, hey, how's Bill? How's the kids? How's this?"
It's the relationship.
Yeah, it's that relationship. And though, it's been a couple years and I got to rack my brain about what it is and who it is, but it's that sense of, hey, we can help out. They're talking to the same person. And even though I'm sitting here in, Leavenworth, Kansas right now, I'm just, in the shadow of Fort Leavenworth, I got people all over the United States that I talk to on a regular basis that, it becomes a relationship.
No, I love that. So just to kind of close out this reevaluation topic. So I think, kind of what I've heard is that, one, don't be afraid of it. You don't need to be sort of paranoid that you always have to be looking at it. It really is something you can do on a periodic kind of normal basis in terms of when things happen and you need to make changes, go ahead and take a look at it and look at the details. Looking at our homeowners, looking at our renters, even looking at like our personal property coverage, like if you have, wedding rings that are insured, making sure you have had those reappraised and have that value adjusted, because some of those metals have changed prices dramatically in the last 10 years. I know, like I just had mine redone, and it was a pretty significant difference, that if I had lost them, I wouldn't have been able to, replace it at the same level and replace it with the same kind of item, because I just didn't have the same coverage. So I think it's just being aware and being kind of engaged in it, which I think, to your point, a lot of times we're like, oh, I'm done. Insurance is done.
Insurance is done.
But, just checking in every now and again is not a bad thing.
No, and prices change over time with companies. New products come in, new companies come in and get different pricing. They'll re-rate and redo and bring back in. Moving states, that's another big one. Everyone just calls their carrier, they move them states. They're like, oh, I'm with my carrier. Well, what may have been the best deal in Virginia is not the best deal in Texas, or vice versa. I've actually seen it where I moved from one city in the south part of the metro to another, and the company that was the best in the south metro was the worst in the north metro. Oh. So even, that change, you think, oh, they've got really good prices. Just changing your zip code can change your price. So it's good to look at that. And the other thing about shopping, it doesn't cost anything. It costs a little bit of time.
Just time, but it doesn't cost I know.
It doesn't. And a lot of the computer systems, like, we're revamping ours right now, where we're trying to get that process down to a 3-5 minute information in, we'll get out to you. The systems are getting really good now with pre-fills information. You put your address in and you think we're stalking you because all this information flooded. But it makes it easier for you, the consumer. It makes it easier for the families out there to get some pricing and say, oh, maybe that company wasn't the best anymore. It was great here.
Or not for this particular area, which I'm definitely guilty of that, of not really thinking about how it changes state to state and just not wanting to take the time. But, at the end of the day, it's probably worth it to do the shopping as you have these major changes, and just make sure you're in the best spot with the best product for, that season that you're in.
Yeah, if I could bring it, I can't do it with every family. I'd be lying if I could. But if I get a family that calls me and I can hand them $800 a year back, $300 a year, $300 a year, whatever it is, well, they're better off when they, after than when they started.
Sure.
And that's just because we inquired and we had a conversation. That's all.
Yep.
And that's with any of them. Again, I encourage my clients to let's look at it again every few years. Call us. We'll reshop it. We'll figure out what we can do for you.
Yeah. No, I appreciate it. Well, I'm glad you stopped by and hang out with us.
Yeah. I truly appreciate having us, and I truly appreciate supporting what you all do. It's great to get out there and, get out with the families and talk and try to answer these questions on this really boring topic. But it is important. You all need it. We all need it. We all have to have it. So, yeah.
Well, we are also grateful to AFI for being one of our premier sponsors for the upcoming Evolve retreat. So those who are attending this weekend will get to see you again. So we are very grateful to you all for continuing to support military spouses in all the ways that you do that. So thank you for being here, and we will sign off.
All right. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
All right, guys, that's it for me today. We will have some more of these coming up in the next few weeks, so definitely keep an eye out for those. But otherwise, have a great rest of your day. Take care.